support for the amendment. Motion. Do the motion to accept the amended. The motion to accept the amended agenda. Support. Johnny supports. We have a motion and a support. Any more discussion on the agenda? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so we have an approved amended agenda. At this point in time, we do what's called call to the public. If you could please approach the podium, you'll get 3 minutes. Just state your name and your address. Dr. Chesney will have a yellow card and a red card. Yellow telling you when you got 30 seconds left of your 3 minutes, we can wrap up your comments appropriately. Thank you.
Glenn Eikens, 125 North Street. Although I do keep an occasional second residence at the Livingston County Correctional Facility. It's good to be out. A pattern of behavior unbecoming a member of this board must not be allowed to go unchecked. A member who repeatedly engages in actions that are beneath the dignity of the office of board member must be held accountable by this Board of Education. Failure to publicly censure such behavior allows such behavior to continue with impunity, and even more concern, a lack of clear censure by the board compromises the integrity and dignity of this representative body. Clear video evidence of ethical and conflict of interest transgressions on the part of a board member must prompt this body to act. I now list some relevant bylaws of the Brighton Board of Education pertaining to the recent and past transgressions of the board member in question. According to board member ethics, members must avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest and refrain from using their board positions for personal or partisan gain. They must take no private action that will compromise the board. They must remember that always their first concern must be for the educational welfare of the students attending the public schools. Conflict of interest. Board members shall perform their duties and in a manner free from conflict of interest. And to this end, no board member shall use his or her position as a board member to benefit either himself, herself, or an individual or agency apart from the total interest of the school district. I jumped down because I'm probably running out of time. The Board of Education's intent is to provide an environment that fosters the respect and dignity of each person. To this end, the board is committed to maintaining an environment free of harassment and intimidation. Engaging in insensitive, if not cruel laughter, while a woman pleads as she is being encircled and harassed by a group of men, closing in and blocking her path, is not behavior becoming an official elected to represent our schools. Please make clear that this collective board is not accurately represented by the misdeeds of one. Send a message to our students and this community that we expect the highest standards of conduct from our elected board officials, and we have a zero tolerance for bullying.
Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you, Mr. Eikens.
Good evening. Wes Nakagiri, 3093 Tipsico Lake Road. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you tonight. The progress under the board and Dr. Gray and prior board members, including John Conley, is quite impressive and should be complimented, especially the shared services program, which really has truly been a salvation for the district. The recent reinstatement of the Pledge of Allegiance is also a positive step. It certainly never hurts to be in compliance with Michigan law. The emerging budget and superior fund equity program being adopted tonight is an excellent step forward. With almost $6 million in the bank, Brighton will have gone from the second worst district in the state behind Detroit in terms of prior budget deficit to emerging as an absolute leader on how to get it right, and we should be commended on that. Hopefully, the new board will have the same wisdom and determination to continue with these positive budgeting trends. Given the new positive budgeting trends and the fund equity being built, it would be wonderful to see the revenues, rather than simply being handed out in raises, put into programs that benefit the students and help decrease the burden on the taxpayers. And lastly, the reputation and progress of Brighton schools rests on your shoulders, and your hard work and due diligence is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marcia Dix, 8017 Ornap. I wanted to take time to thank John Conley for all his involvement and his mentoring he's done for the Brighton School District. The things he's been involved in, robotics program, now has 35 students, auto tech career education, 130 students, health occupations, 100 students, engineering CAD, 100 students. He spends tons of hours on the auto tech program, coaches teams, Brighton schools, and the list goes on. But for me personally, more important was that he brought back the Pledge of Allegiance. You know, it was to our detriment that in 1962, the Supreme Court took prayer and the Ten Commandments out of our public schools. So it means a lot to know that someone fought to make our children hear and learn the words republic and one nation under God. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ann Russell, 8588 Southridge Drive. I'm here because I was appalled to hear that the Pledge of Allegiance has not been implemented at Brighton High School. Give you a little bit of background. In November 2012, Brighton High School was looking for someone to donate 90 flags. On Tuesday, November the 20th, my husband made sure that Brighton High School was going to have the 90 flags. He got the brackets and everything. December 3rd, on December the 19th, he presented the flags to Gavin Johnson as promised, and he was told those flags would be up so that when the students return right after Christmas break, they would have the opportunity to say the Pledge of Allegiance. This has not happened, and I am very happy that John Conley had the guts to bring this issue up. It's very important. We have our youth are strayed, and one way to have a great love of this country, we've got immigrants trying to get in here because they know what a great country is. Our students need to learn and to be given the opportunity of saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Hello. My name's Joellen Pizarchik. I'm at 12477 Scenic View Court. I love the new podium. Also, I come in peace. Thank you. I'm here tonight, though, with genuine concern. I'm concerned and worried about our community. We need to be having open, honest, constructive discussions about education here, and that we don't seem to be able to do that. Recently, you made a decision not to vote or even consider authorization for Livingston Classical Academy. I'm fine with that. I'm not looking to revisit it. It's a done deal. But I am here to ask you why. If you look back over the board videos, even to August 25th, and you all were present at most of those meetings, there was a steady mantra of politically based denunciations and accusations. And a key piece of advice from a few vocal opponents kept saying, don't go there, don't put it on the agenda, don't even consider it. Meantime, time, some 200 people from across Livingston County came here, mostly homeschoolers, and they came to your meeting asking for consideration. They never really got it. On February 9th, you made a sudden decision not to even put the idea to a vote. My question is, why no public presentation by the charter team? Why was that not permitted? Why no factual discussion on the merits, the pros, the cons, the costs, the benefits? Why no explanation on the record of why you were for or against it, but only no decision, no vote, no consideration? So where's the transparency there? But I'm not here to beat you guys up. I know your job is hard. I'm here to say that even though something like that has never happened historically, it's unprecedented, I understand that it was difficult, and I'm wondering if it happened because you were under duress. Was it the result of political pressure? It's all over now, but where do we go from here? Somebody once said, it's better to be for people than against things. And I'm for young people and their parents who ought to have a say in educational opportunities, especially in their community. I'm for citizens whose tax dollars you're in charge of. And I'm for teachers who want the flexibility to teach the curriculum they love. So if you're for people, listening to a few without considering anyone else disregards and disrespects the people. This is not about tea parties, it's not about takeovers. This is about building the best schools and educational opportunities we can. And think of what we could accomplish if we come together and put our heads together and have a constructive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name's Henry Benjamin, 8660 Maria Court. John, I just want to thank you for coming to the meeting last Saturday. I don't know if you were invited or if you were invited and that's why you came, but as a businessman, I always like to check out what the competition is. Walmart likes to know where Myers is opening up. Myers wants to know where Walmart's opening up. They want to know what's going on over here. Kroger's wants to know what BG's is doing, and back and forth. I think it's a good idea that you came to the meeting. I think it's a great idea. Number one, I think that you're looking to see what's going on as far as competition goes. If it is competition or if it isn't competition, it's still a good idea to go there and find out what the facts are and see what's happening. You could have gotten a great idea out of it. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I don't know. But it was worth the time to go do it. And I think that anytime that something like that comes up, you know, if you're a business person and you want to keep your place running, and you know, that's what you do. It's unfortunate that you take a lot of heat from some of the radio stations and things around town for what's going on. I just don't think they're giving both sides of the statement out here. So, just thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Lisa Benjamin, 8660 Maria Court. I have 3 adult children. 2 of them went to Brighton High School, love Brighton High School, love Brighton. We live in Heartland, Powell address, Heartland Township. I have a young student that is in 4th grade, and we're thinking about coming to Brighton, moving back to Brighton, because I didn't like the drive of my daughter every day, back and forth. And I want to keep all my options open, whether I go to public school, whether I go to St. Pat's, whatever. I did go to the meeting for Livingston Classical Academy because I wanted to find out what all my options are before I make a decision. That's an important decision. I wanted to come to the board meeting, and I was told that there's a 30-minute limit on call to public, and I was a little stumped. I didn't understand why, and I looked it up, and I heard that it's illegal to do that. Let me just read to you. A public body may adopt a rule imposing individual time limits for members of the public addressing the public body. In order to carry out its responsibilities, the board can also consider establishing rules allowing the chairperson to encourage groups to designate 1 or more individuals to speak on their behalf to avoid cumulative comments. But A rule limiting the period of public comment may not be applied in a manner that denies a person the right to address the public body, such as by limiting all public comment to a half-hour period, which does concern me which school I will be picking if this is the rule. Thank you.
Allison Cox, 689 Glenwood. I do not plan on speaking, so bear with me, but I would like to say it's nice to see so many out-of-district people come and speak, which is nice. Two things. One, whether we're breaking the law with the whole Pledge of Allegiance thing is a totally different story, but I would like to thank Dr. Gray for allowing the school to handle it on their own. I feel kind of insulted that it would be insinuated that because you don't say the Pledge of Allegiance that you are not a patriot. As far as the charter, I think that there's a misunderstanding as to why the public is having an issue with this. I think as a Hispanic Jewish woman who lives in this county, we have not always been made to feel welcome. And my concern as a parent is that by allowing this man to open a school, we will be going back to our old reputation instead of moving forward. So I think that that's what everybody needs to keep in mind. It's not anti-charter, it's anti-racism and discrimination in our county.
Hi, my name is Sue Ellen Ikens, and I live at 125 North 4th in Brighton. Okay, so I remember saying this over a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, when I first read these tweets at a school board meeting. And so I'll repeat it again. The issue is not whether or not people should have these views. People in my family have these views. People on my block have these views. People I socialize with have these views. They do. They're out there. We all know it. It's the elephant in the room. It isn't whether or not we should condone these views. I don't condone these views. I condone transcending politics. The issue is whether someone is coarse and inelegant in his expressions on social and political issues should be marketing a school that will be indentured to paying him tax dollar subsidized rent forever. $1.45 million purchase, monthly rent ad infinitum. What if the landlord wants to raise the rent? You're gonna move the gymnasium, all the things that you constructed, all the books. You're gonna move your home? You're gonna move your home where your school is identified as being? No, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna pay more rent. What if he raises the rent again? The issue is whether someone is coarse and inelegant in his expressions on social and political issues should be marketing a school that will be indentured to paying him tax dollar subsidized rent forever. And whether our beloved Brighton area schools should authorize a school born of these expressions. And when I say a school born of these expressions, I encourage you to do what I told you to do 2 years ago. I have been fighting this battle for 2 years. Nothing was sudden, Miss Pizarczyk. Does that mean I have a little time?
30 seconds.
Okay, sorry. I have been trying to get this across for almost 2 years now. Oh, the Twitter that's so controversial, if you go through and you read them, sandwiched in between each one of these insensitive remarks is a shill for first American Christian Academies, then American Classical Academies, then Limbaugh Classical Academies,
You start wrapping up, please.
and now Livingston Classical Academies. I just want to make sure everybody understands that he connected them. I didn't connect them. They were always There, right on top of the other. And it's all on the record. Go look it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jonathan Weinraub, 8815 North Christine. No, I'm sorry, South Christine. When a man petulantly walks out of a Brighton school meeting, of which he is a board member, because he did not get his way, for a school that he is trying to endorse and support, that shows where his allegiance is. A person like that does not deserve the right to be a board member of the Brighton Association, of the Brighton area schools. That's it.
Does anyone else wish to address the Board of Education this evening? I see none. That closes our call to the public. Next up on the agenda is board reports. Is there any board reports or comments today?
I just wanted to announce that there is an early childhood committee meeting, which is composed of pre-K through second grade teachers. The meeting is going to be Thursday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. They are having a guest speaker, Jennifer Roundtree, and she is going to speak on social and emotional development. Where's it at? We meet at the, I don't remember what it's called now, the Main Street Restaurant. 440 Main, it was, I don't know if it's still, it's changed names.
Main Crossings.
Main Crossings?
Yep.
That was Stonefire.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Mr. Conley had his hand up first. Mr. Conley?
A couple items. The Brighton Lions Club dropped off a flyer today for a scholarship they're offering, and they're not getting a lot of responses. And every year they offer this these last several years, and so I wanted to throw that out. And I did give a copy to Dr. Gray to possibly look at it, and also gave one to our student rep to get it out there. Another item, I did a little research on actually a couple of schools in our district and how they were handling the Pledge of Allegiance. I called...
Excuse me, we can't hear.
Thank you. I called Heartland Schools and talked to their assistant superintendents, actually his secretary, and they sent me back a response. And in the high school, every morning the principal or the assistant principal recites the Pledge of Allegiance in high school. That's what they're doing. And I also pulled their board policy on a couple things. One specifically was which was pretty much identical to ours because it's Neola policies 8800. It was identical. And then if you look up another item, it's policy 8220. I assume ours is probably the same. It's again, I assume it's Neola policies. It doesn't say what it is, but it talks about things besides the Pledge of Allegiance, and one is specifically religious readings or exercises. This is Heartland's. Shall not be part of opening, closing, or any other exercise for any school day. Something I wanted to bring forward. And then it also talks about who does sets it up. The principals are responsible in each building to align that. Again, I believe this is parallel to our Neola policies guidelines as well. But I'd like us to look at that. And also look at, if in fact there's an infraction, what our board wants to do about that, if there's an infraction on those policies. So specifically the 8800 policy, and then also this 8220 policy from Heartland Schools regarding this taking place in the school, and how, again, we want to address it. Another item, did a little research on when the flags reappeared at Brighton High School. It appears they had a 20-year absence. All right, we had a lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Air Force in here, I believe, last board meeting, and he explained to us in one of our middle schools, when he brought his daughter to Brighton schools, or two daughters, he went into the school and realized there were no flags. This is maybe 6 years ago, I believe, the exact dates. And now the gentleman, which I believe would have been this woman's husband, when he got to Brighton High School, basically it took 90 flags in our school to get it set back up. But he was given the indication that the 20 years they hadn't been there. My concern is who took them out, because they were there. Because I went to that school. So just so it doesn't happen again, and I know the law's in place now, and I guess they can't come out. But if anybody knows where they went, I'd sure be interested to know. And who in their right mind would have taken the flags out of Brighton area schools, classroom by classroom? And, oh, and I also did a call to Pinckney High School, and they're on the same kind of page that we're on, as far as what they do with the pledge, and also with Heartland. And that's the extent of my calls. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Mr. Trombley?
I know transparency seems to be a big issue here, so I'd like to ask Dr. Gray and Dr. Gissinger, even for that matter, Matt Marino, could you clearly explain what this $5,000 alleged kickback from the Macomb group was in regards to? And I guess why, I know you guys just found out last week, as well as myself, and I was wondering why Matt knew about it since August 29th, and if you could explain this to people.
Yeah, when I got the call from you, I checked into it in relation to $5,000 because obviously I had no idea. My understanding was through the bond project there was another type of part used that caused either a cheaper part or a rebate in terms of the part, and so it was set aside in an account. Now my understanding is that it can go back to the owner or it can be credited back to the company. So it was credited to the owner. It's sat there ever since it's been credited. I actually called them and told them just to send it back to the actual company because we weren't going to use it.
But I guess we never had a purchase order to receive a credit, right? That would have been through the contract.
Correct.
And the way I understood it was that this boiler manufacturer wasn't low on bid day. They came back after the fact. Someone from Brighton Schools recommended that they use this type of boiler. And in lieu of that, if you're doing that, this boiler manufacturer gave Brighton Schools a $5,000 credit after the fact, after it was bid. That's the way I understood it to be done. And it was for material return is what it said. But if you don't have a purchase order with the company, how are they going to turn around and give you a $5,000 credit? It should have been with the contractor, because of the contract and bought that material. So again, from this whole transparency standpoint, I don't see this being very transparent. And again, why didn't you guys know about it, especially when you're in charge of the bond? So.
My understanding is it went in August. I didn't know about it in relation to it. So when I found out, I checked into it. And in terms of the return, I would agree. I believe it was for either product returned or a difference in price in terms of the product used. That company was selected in terms of the boilers because Lochnavar is the boiler that we use in the majority of our buildings. So whether it's low bid or not really doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on it because we chose one that we already service and use and those types of
But I
things.
think it does have a bearing when it comes to a bidding standpoint, because when something's bid, the contractor that holds that contract will go out to different manufacturers, and they'll carry the low bid and the low number, which at that time Lochnavar wasn't carrying.
Correct.
I believe someone from Brighton Schools asked Loch to get a price out of Lochnavar after the fact, okay, and then Lochnavar said, oh, by the way, here's this nice $5,000 credit here, as long as you endorse our product and tell them we'd like to use it. That's the way I understood it. So I just don't think it's right, especially when the public bond money in place. Matt Marino has known about it since August 29th. Dr. Gissinger and Dr. Gray, I don't think knew about it until last week when I brought it to their attention. But to me, I don't know how we can buy and do this kind of stuff. And again, this whole transparency thing, let's try to keep this stuff above board. I mean, how many of these other types of things have happened?
Do you have any more?
I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley. I think as we go forward, we need to definitely keep our hands a little bit closer as a board on these type of things to avoid that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
On that note, on refunds and different things that can happen along the process, I think the key is, and I think Jay hit on it, that it's been made aware now, the superintendent knows about it. But in Matt Marino's situation, I truly believe he should bring it to you as soon as he has an indication, because we know that bond money can't be used for maintenance.
Well, of course.
That's clear. But an open charge account with a credit balance on it can be used for anything it wants to be used for.
Not when it was originally bond money.
Correct.
So that's not completely accurate. So if that $5,000 would have been spent on stuff, it would have had to have qualified under bond dollars.
Correct.
Again, it wasn't our money to spend in the first place.
But that's right, but it wasn't money we gave them. They
That's
had to
correct.
fund it.
Correct.
This was in pie in the sky. But the issue, though, either way, if we had spent it, we'd have been incorrect in how, if we used it to buy a part for the boiler even. No?
I don't know if that's completely accurate.
I don't know.
Because there are rebates in terms of bonds from time to time, depending how it works out. So that's not accurate. There was nothing illegally done. What was done was a rebate. I think what we're talking about is process, is what I'm hearing in terms of, I didn't know about the rebate. And so when Bill called me and told me about the rebate and I checked into it, any even appearance that it wasn't right, we don't want that either, because that's why we've been audited every year so far on this bond dollar, and we'll continue to be audited. So I've asked Matt to let me know in the future on these particular things, and I think it's a good practice.
But
So
again, this says return material, it doesn't say anything about rebate, which means we took material, gave it back and got it credit. We never owned that material in the first place.
So it's probably never used or excess or
never bought it.
It's not.
We never bought it. We never
well,
paid for it.
my understanding though was it was a cheaper, well, not cheaper, less expensive product that went in than the original one spec. That's the difference in the price on it.
Oh, who made that decision?
That's
Because
just
I
my
remember-
understanding. I don't either.
I don't know. I don't remember making that decision.
That's fine, but this is in the term of this whole program.
For
This is
sure.
the first time this has come up in the scope of everything
Well-
that we've done to this point.
Yeah.
Dr. Gray, can we get a copy of that just distributed more this week? So we can all-
Yeah, we can
Just, I mean,
run, yeah, we'll write you up
get
something in
eyes- well,
relation
We can
to
all
it.
get eyes on it. I think
Yeah.
that'd be appropriate for us.
That helps.
Anybody else? Nobody else?
I just, I want to express how proud I am of Brighton area schools and the amount of talent we have within this school district. The upcoming musical is a display of incredible talent here in this community. State champions in wrestling as a team, and then as individuals. Yeah, 2 state number ones, and then I think 1 3, 2 4s, and 2 5s. I think. So it's very impressive. And then additionally, pom, cheer, girls basketball has had a heck of a season, and certainly all the great work that the bands, choir, everybody's doing, and I know I'm remiss in forgetting some of them, and I apologize, but I just, as a board member and as an alum, I can't tell you how proud I am and how exciting it is to see the success carrying out in Brighton area schools. So congratulations to everyone.
And I'll just throw in what Dr. Grayson talked about, and that is the robotics team on Saturday was able to win its first event, but it was they combined with other teams, the Milford Hot team and one other team.
Waterford Mott.
Waterford Mott, and they just were red hot. And this is technically their probably second year at this level in reality, and they were able to compete against 40 teams. And the really neat thing about this coming together of the students, there's approximately 10 girls and 30 guys. But on this development, General Motors not only built the classroom, which we talked about already once, but then recently Ford Motor Company got involved with General Motors. Now Ford Motor Company is sponsoring, along with General Motors, the Brighton High School program. I've never seen it in the history of the automotive business that the blue oval was right with General Motors logo. And I'm really proud to say again, what Brighton's doing right, that they feel that confident that they can put their name right alongside of it, our Brighton High School students. That's a big thing for us. And so everybody that's involved in that and supported whatever little bit that they did, it's a good beginning. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Anybody else? All right, 4 actions. The first item we have up is the minutes of the last meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? So Mr. Trombley, do we have support? Support. From Mr. Burchell, any discussion about the last minutes? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes 7-0. Next up, fund equity. Dr. Gissner?
You have in your packet our recommendation to change policy 6220 budget preparation to state that the board shall strive to maintain a minimum target fund equity of 10% of revenue. to maintain the fund in a secure financial position.
Do we have a motion? Motion. We have support?
Support.
Oh, pick one.
Mr. Chesney, look at that. Any discussion about that? Let's look at the right. Mr. Conley?
Been waiting 10 years. Maybe. I did some checking with another district just to see how they were handling their fund equity today. And in a sense, what they've done is they actually, it says, this is from their assistant supers, and it says, all union contracts require salary reductions necessary to maintain their minimum fund balance level. So it's something in the future to maybe look at.
The formula?
Yes, and it makes sense, and it talked about where they were going, and I had them do from 99 all the way to 14 and 15, and they've had their times. They went from a 12% to 13 to 10 to 8, and they're fighting a battle right now to go to 5, potentially. And that's for 14, 15.
Yeah.
And so
It'll be lower than that after this.
it may be, but the issue though is we're looking at the economics and how well and how fortunate our district is. I heard a couple people talk about that tonight. And again, we can look at Dr. Green, Maria, Laura, administrative staff for putting their foot out there and holding doors to build this. So we're not facing that right now. We've seen this. This is a very good school district, again, from a 13.2% fund equity in 12 and 13, or 11 and 12, 10% in 12 and 13, and Dr. Gray's projections potentially 2%. And their initial write-up here is 5, but I mean, the real numbers will come. So as we look forward in what we're doing here and adopting this policy, I think it's a wonderful step forward. And I thank everybody for being involved. And let's go Brighton. Let's go Bulldogs.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Mr. Tremblay?
I remember when Maynard Castellan was in here, who was our independent auditor, they recommended 20% fund equity. And I'm wondering if maybe, they're at 10, they're at 20, and I think they cited the fact because of our past financial issues, problems we had. I'm wondering if maybe we should consider somewhere in the middle as 15 and be done with it, because you got the professionals that audit our books on an annual basis telling us 20. We've got the administration telling us 10.
Can I ask a question, Dr. Gieslinger, because I think it relates to this. We might have talked it last time. This 10% is on revenue. His 15 was on our budget, right? On our expenditure.
I don't want to speak for our auditors. I can't exactly recall what he said. If he said 20%, that's pretty high. There's hardly a school district in the state of Michigan that's at 20%. So we thought we would at least start with a target minimum, because we get to about 10% and we don't have to borrow anymore for cash flow purposes. We can look to continually revise the policy as we go along. We just thought we'd at least have something out there for the board to consider. Not to mention, remember, that's our target minimum. So I kind of want to shift our thinking so that when we get to 10%, I've said this before, it's like our new zero.
You're setting a basement, not a ceiling.
Right.
So.
There's no reason to think that it wouldn't keep growing once we got to 10%. We're just setting that.
There is no reason to think it would not continue to grow once we got to 10%.
And like I said, that's based mostly on borrowing for cash flow purposes throughout the year. That takes that off the table.
Yes.
That's where the 10% we can work from there. So that, okay.
And it's, again, we just suggest it as a target minimum.
But don't forget, if there's a catastrophic failure somewhere that
Yes.
costs us money, that will drop, then we'll have to pay the borrow.
Sure.
Right.
As I remember, he mentioned the 20%, but then he qualified that and saying in times like this with the uncertainty that the state is going through and what they've done in the past, then he said something about 15%.
Mr. Conley?
Yeah, on that note, I'm all in with Bill's idea to increase it, but I think this is a great starting point.
Yeah.
And lock it down, and I think this is great. And then, again, we can look at it again
Yes.
as things come in, and Maria's budgets come in, and I would like to go to 15 again. It goes back to saving the district actual dollars, and then you can tell us what that savings is, and then we can decide if we bump that up to save the money so they have it to spend on the programs. It's permanent hard dollars, which is very important. So, like I said, this is just a great thing to get to vote on tonight.
So do I hear we're all right with 10% minimum, and then at a future time, based on our financial situation at that point in time, we'll reevaluate what we have as board policy? Okay, so we have a motion and support. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes 7-0. We got a amended bond policy. Thank you, Dr. Gistinger, for your work. Resignations. Dr. Gray?
We recommend that you accept the resignation of Cheryl Bisher. She has been with the district 15 years in our child care CTE teacher program, and her letter of resignation is attached.
Do we have a motion to accept this resignation?
So moved.
We have a motion. Support. Support. Any discussion?
Do we have somebody to replace her?
We'll get somebody.
Okay, so the programs will continue?
Yes.
So the program she had running will...
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion and support. I just want to thank Cheryl for her service to the district. It's very much appreciated. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Passes 7-0. Retirements.
We recommend that you accept the retirements of the teachers listed below. Krisha Alexander, English teacher at the high school, 14 years of service. Alan Lafferty, special ed teacher at Maltby, 14 years of service. Melanie Walls, special ed at the high school, 20 years. Roxanne McGonigal, special ed at the high school, 15 years. Kathy Posley, our district nurse for 17 years. Cheryl Braun, special ed teacher at Spencer for 24 years. Cyril Wolbert, math teacher at the high school for 30 years. Diana Mason, English teacher at the high school for 30 years, and Jan Maxey, a phys ed teacher at the high school for 39 and a half years. And we recommend this with appreciation.
We have a motion to accept these retirements.
So moved.
Support. Motion and support. Any discussion? Mr. Birchfield?
I just want to recognize 219 years of service of 10 employees that we've just, we're accepting resignations here tonight. So that's a heck of a lot of intellectual capital that's walking out the door. So it's very much appreciated and well recognized, and certainly the retirements are well deserved. But that's a lot of years of service to replace. So it's a loss to the district.
Mr. Penn?
Same question. Obviously, these positions that are folks that are retiring from, we have to fill them.
Yes.
Okay, and then on the overlap in training and all those things, and that's in the works, are we going to...
We have a new teacher orientation program. We have mentor programs. Yeah, we'll be all right.
So keep the same head of steam up with the professionalism?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve and support. We've had some discussion. I'd just like to thank these individuals for the dedication they've given to our kids and our district for this many years. Like I said, the number of years is incredible. Not an easy job, so we just want to thank them all for that. So all in support of these retirements signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. It passes 7-0. Thank you very much for your dedication to the district. That's applause. Next up, Dr. Gray, leave of absence request.
We recommend you approve the leave of absent request before you tonight. The first one from Brittany Antoni, and it's an extension of her unpaid leave of absence for 15-16. This is the second consecutive year of unpaid leave, and she is aware that the board typically only grants 2 years of unpaid leave. Jennifer Shibley is the second one. She's requesting 1 year unpaid leave of absence for 15-16. She's currently a grade 5 teacher at Maltby and has 13 years of service with the district. This would be her first year.
Okay, we have a motion to approve request for leave of absence. So moved. We have a motion from Ms. Minor. Second. Support from Mr. Chesney. Any discussion on this?
I just, I'm not necessarily advocating that we address it tonight, but the 2-year leave of absence is somewhat of a concern to me. I understand the reasoning behind those personal decisions, but I do think that there's impact to the district as a whole as well. So,
Do you want some history on that?
Sure.
So 6 years ago, there were approximately 20 people on leave, with the most tenured one being off for 17 years. In the former contract, you were guaranteed the position you left from regardless of how many years that you were gone. So that person that hadn't been in our district in 17 years didn't even live in the state. As long as they sent a letter each year, if a position came open that they wanted, they could ask for that position back and re-enter our district at the same salary scale that they left in relation to it. So all that language has been cleaned up. So the board took this stance 6 years ago when we were trying to clean up the 17 people on leave, and 2 years has been the maximum that they've gone with since then, and it's primarily been tied to childcare, because we found in surveying the people that were going out that they were placing kids in daycare situations after the first 2 years, and that's why we kind of landed on the 2-year mark, just for some history.
I appreciate the explanation. And I understand the ramifications and factors behind it. It's also a business that we're operating, and something that we have to, I think, take into consideration.
And again, like you said, it's been our policy to do that as a board, but it's not to say that if someone came with a third year with circumstances that warranted a board discussion and a decision, doesn't mean we wouldn't do it. Just historically, we've kind of set the 2-year mark as being something that we agreed with, and, you know, the BEA's kind of
remember too, the other difference is now when people are on leave, they are not guaranteed anything. So if we have 292 teachers this year, somebody takes a leave and we have 292 teachers next year, they are not automatically placed back in the system, and they do not bump anybody.
Mr. Condon?
On that, let's talk about this situation. So we have one that's looking at the 2-year.
Yes.
Do we have anybody else that's on that same kind of opportunity, I mean, throughout the district? I mean, is there...
Well, I can't recall. There might be 1 or 2 others that are on
There's
leave,
not
but
an overflow of this?
5
Maybe 5?
maybe district-wide?
Okay. That's out of all of our people?
Right.
Yeah, this policy's really shrunk that.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, there was an issue a while ago, but
Me too, from
yeah, maybe 4, maybe 5.
Okay.
Yeah, and my questioning isn't, I don't know Miss Antoni,
Yep.
and this has nothing to do personally.
No.
This is strictly a question that I have as classroom management.
Sure.
and
Remember the other
fluency
piece
of-
is we typically hire somebody, and when we hire them, they have to be highly qualified. We can't staff any classrooms in this district without somebody who falls under the state highly qualified standard. So we're not just making do till they get back. We are going out and recruiting the best and the brightest, putting them in the classroom, and if there's a position open, after 2 years, they can come back. If there isn't a position open, they can't bump back in. And so I don't think we're losing any quality. I'd be more concerned about losing quality if we were maybe putting a sub in or multiple subs, those types of things. That causes me greater concern. And, you know, if you let it go 10, 12, 14 years, we kind of lose track, and we don't know if they've kept up on professional development. The district changes dramatically over a decade. That was our big concern when we switched from unlimited down to the 2-year.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. Next up is the E-rate bid award.
Per Board Policy 6320, Purchasing and Federal E-rate legislation governing competitive bid requirements, it's recommended that Brighton area schools accept the following vendors for services. Dedicated telephone service, we'd like to recommend Clear Rate Communications. If you look down under rationale and facts and statistics, Clear Rate would be a new vendor for us, but they are 25% of the price of the previous vendor we were paying, so it does make fiscal sense to move to this particular vendor. We'll continue to evaluate. This is our landline and E-rate service. This is not the wireless. We're also bidding our wireless service as we do sporadically, and we'll bring that recommendation to you in the future. But these are our landline service.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. We have a motion to approve.
Support.
We have support. Discussion.
Did Mr. Turner investigate that? I've never heard of this company.
Yes.
Did he investigate it? Did he do?
Had a hallway discussion with him about it today. Yes. He did do his due diligence in relation to this. He feels very comfortable with it.
Are there any other districts?
There are.
that we know?
Yep. Those are the people he called.
Appreciate that. All right, we have a motion. Any discussion?
I have a question. It's, in looking at our bills to be paid, so page 52 of the packet, there's a charge in there, or multiple charges for PAE, TEC, PayTech.
Oh, yes, that is our landline.
So
Actually, I take that back. That is the vendor that provides our phone service. I'm not clear if it's the landline or our mobile phones.
Okay, so do we know if this expense would go away by accepting this contract?
It will when the new contract kicks in. Okay?
Right.
Yes. So it wouldn't go away, it would be reduced by about 75%. So if you look down at Windstream versus Clearrate under facts and statistics, the incumbent company was Windstream. So presently, Windstream's cost to the district is roughly $2,800, okay, per month. Clearrate's rate would be $691.53 per month. So approximately 25% of what we're paying Windstream right now. And so that's the recommendation. So it wouldn't go away completely because we'll still have landlines, but it would be reduced significantly.
Any other discussion? We have a motion second. No more discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes 7-0. Next up, for future action, extension of the superintendent's contract. I guess I should probably have that a little bit.
You wanted to talk
about it.
Kind of awkward.
But as part of the evaluation process, we yearly review the superintendent's contract for the next following year and extend it. It's a 5-year rolling contract. This will be an extension to the end of it. But there are some, can we discuss, can you maybe point out a few of the financial, or Dr. Gistinger maybe, the impact of some of the financials?
Right, that's under me.
Mayor, me, who do you want to do it?
Dr. Gistinger, if she would.
Okay. We're not proposing an increase in the superintendent's base salary, which has remained at $135,000 since the start of his career here in Brighton area schools. However, in the contract, there's 2% of the net shared service revenue audited from the previous fiscal year. In the event that the shared service FTE drops below 500 FTEs, then the superintendent shall remain harmless with the base salary of $155,000. We've added an additional 5 vacation days to the contract, which matches everybody else now. For some reason, on the way in the door, he only had 20 vacation days, and now we've bumped him to 25. The life insurance limits have been raised to $1 million on a term policy basis. And I believe that is the conclusion of the changes that we've made to the contract.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, and this will take effect at the beginning of the next school year, so.
The contract start date is July 1 of 2015.
So the 2% then would be on last year's shared services spread out through next year, or paid out next year, depending on how, based on the language.
Yes.
After the audit.
Yeah, when I met with the group that we bargained this contract with, I think the big principle behind it was merit-based pay. And in terms of if you're going to go out and do additional work, and additional work at central office as well, if you keep going out and showing more revenue, like the gross revenue for shared service now is $11 million, that the district wouldn't have if Dr. Gistinger, myself, Dr. Surrey, and Mr. Johnson hadn't gone and got it. I wouldn't get any of that. If we choose not to maintain those relationships, and that goes away, obviously my salary would be reduced. I think it was a business model that the people I negotiated it with have in their profession. You know, in terms of my salary in the district, my base is the second lowest in the county, and that's fine, but I'm fine with being incentivized.
So will this keep you here then?
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you this, another thing, I know it's on for future action. Right. Is it really necessary that we carry it out and vote on it next week, or?
support it, I'll second it, or you bring it up.
I mean,
Get a kind of a little consensus maybe. Does anybody want to look at this for the week, for the next 2 meetings, or do we want to do it now? It doesn't really matter. One of the things we'd like to talk about, though, is in addition to this, is this type of model now as we go forward in the next year, we're going to be looking at the other organizations and bargaining units within the district to start doing something not exactly like this, but similar as we go forward. So this is the first step in, there's many to come as far as how we treat the district as far as compensation goes. So.
These
we don't have, oh, good.
I have a question. And I want to start this off by saying, Dr. Gray, I'm a fanboy. I just think you've done amazing work here in Brighton area schools. But a question that I have about this is that the number that was used for the net shared service revenue changed between closed session and this open session. And I'd like a little bit of an explanation as to why that
The reason it changed was in the original contract that was brought to you, it had a 1.5% stipend this year. The more we talked about it, nobody's receiving anything this year. I didn't want to single myself out in terms of gaining something when everybody else is held flat. So we'll all hold flat in terms of the district, and then in 15-16, we can all look at some incentives for our abilities and our evaluations and our ability to bring revenue to the district.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you.
In this is years late, in my opinion. Okay, in my opinion. I think of the tasks that our superintendent has taken on, and again, he and I haven't seen eye to eye on every issue, but there's one thing for certain we've seen eye to eye on is how our students progress here and what we can do to help them progress. And there's been no issue with that from the first day we met to sitting here today. And I think that there's really no question in my mind that, like you said, this should happen, and like I said, I felt it should happen 2 years ago, because this whole project started a few years ago, where we could take monies that, again, this one-time money every year and say this can be bonused where it doesn't knock down our original general fund numbers. So at the same time, I'll say this, just because Dr. Gray is getting this doesn't mean that there's going to be dollars opened up for people that haven't done increased work as well, in my opinion. I'm looking at incentive-based hard work, be it coaching. And for instance, I've been working real hard on getting full-time coaches for Science Olympiad. I would love to pay a coach's salary for our coaches in the science programs. They would be paid just like an athletic coach, and look at as that as a potential. And I would love to see a sport be able to look at those ideas, because for a long time we couldn't even talk about it, but we'll be able to. And so, like I said, I think this is great, and I just wish it would have happened a couple years ago for Dr. Gray, but today's what it is.
Appreciate it. So, thank you.
I would feel more comfortable if we waited to vote on this next time, since it is under future action, and it's the first time it's presented to the public. I think we should, that's my opinion, to hold off.
Any more discussion? So this will be on for next time. Direct any questions to Dr. Gray, Dr. Gistinger, or myself in the next couple weeks if you see anything, but we look forward to finalizing that deal with you, Dr. Gray. For information, curriculum and instruction, Dr. Suri.
There's a future action item.
Oh, sorry. You're right. B, I even have an arrow drawn to it. B, future for information, policy for public meetings, correct?
Policy for public comment. Basically, there was an issue brought up during Call of the Public today about the 30-minute time limit on Call of the Public. And I would like to, with the permission of the board, just to review our policy, just to make sure we're in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, and that the Call of the Public maximizes the ability of the citizens to speak and to come up to the podium and talk, and also optimizes the board's ability towards policy and governance of the school board. So basically, between now and the next meeting, I just want to review those policies and bring forth what potential policy modifications might be at the next proposal.
So would you like it for action next time, or Or just put it on for future action?
Keep it on for future action, and I will come up with what the proposals are, just to review that next time, and then possibly the meeting after that, we can bump it up.
Because I mean, if our policy is in violation, which it sounded like, and after review, we'll know for sure, then we need to make that change as soon as possible.
Well, wouldn't you like to have Truman review that?
Well, we'll bring it to future action, we'll have to take.
I can run it through MES Babe too. Yeah, either one.
Okay.
They won't charge us.
Okay.
I got a comment on that, too. Comment on that. On Call of the Public, it was, I believe, 2 years ago, we brought the second Call of the Public. Is that correct, Mr. Trombley?
Yep.
Two or so.
Maybe a little more.
And what happened, Dr. Chesney, is I felt, anyway, as a board member, somewhere like, what are the policies? I felt there were questions generated through a board meeting that at the end, people didn't get a chance to get up and talk about because they may not have known what was going on. And I think that the board has addressed and is looking at that. So you bring it forward, certainly glad to look at it. But like I said, I think that if we do have the 2 calls to the public, we'll have to determine maybe if there's a mandatory time for the first one, and then maybe the second one we hold to 30 minutes. But we'll have to see what the policies are.
The policy for Open Meetings Act is that you can't limit the amount of time.
At either call the public.
No.
At either call the public, but you can.
We'll specify a first or second call.
Okay.
First or second, but you can limit the amount of time per individual.
Okay.
And you can limit whether an individual can come up to the microphone 2 times.
So the half hour too is pretty widely talked about across boards all across Michigan. And typically it's due to if there's a hot button issue out there and you get 45 people in a row that say the exact same thing. It's to try to curb that a little bit. And a lot of times they'll ask for a representative of that group of people. And that's how the half hour started in terms of conversation. We've never limited it to a half hour. We've never gone under a half hour, even though it's been said at the table.
Well, the last one we, 2 meetings ago.
Oh, did we? I don't remember that.
Yeah, we did because it was a loaded room.
First and second call.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We wanted to reduce it because we had that issue
I don't
going
remember
on,
that.
we had the interviews, and we're just
Sure.
trying to optimize our time, so it was an error on our part, my part specifically.
And not purposeful. I
No,
think
no,
that's
no,
what
board
needs to be
policy.
clear. That wasn't I mean, that was one meeting of
Infinite length.
many that was going to be long in the first place.
But I guess the takeaway, Dr. Chesney wants to make sure we're doing this right going forward.
Sure.
So look at some proposals on how it's done, talk to the Truman MASB, and we'll put something on for future action at the next meeting to review, and then action at the following meeting. Is everyone okay with that?
You bet.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chesney. Next one up now, Dr. Gistinger, Finance. Bills.
No. Dr. Suri.
Curriculum.
Skipped you.
It's okay.
Dr. Suri.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd actually like to begin, before I talk about curriculum, I just wanted to make a personal note, if I can, about Diana Mason, who submitted for retirement. And I should probably say nice things about all these great deserving people, but I just wanted folks, you guys to know specifically, 30 years of service, and it says as an English teacher, but actually she was a special education teacher for about 25 years and the department chair of special education at Brighton High School, and did amazing things for kids with special needs, and I think that should be acknowledged. But more to the point, she then went on and said, but I've always had this other thing. I really wanted to teach English. And so she put in for a transfer into that department, and very, very quickly became up to the level where she was an honors English teacher, an AP English teacher. So I always bring that, kind of excellence. But next week I'll say nice things about the other people too, but our next meeting. But I just think it's an amazing career, and I wanted to say that. The other thing, just in terms of information, what's going on in curriculum and instruction, well, as you know, we just finished the ACT testing and work keys test at Brighton High School and here at the Bridge, and had successful rounds of both. This was this past week, so many, many, many thanks to the counselors, the administrators, the teachers, the support people, everybody, the parents, for feeding them and getting them to school on time, and the other parents for making sure their kids got to school on time. And we also, at the same time, would give the plan Explore to the underclassmen. So it's an incredible organizational feat to pull that off. And Jennifer Sprice-Tullner in particular at Brighton High School loses lots of sleep over it this time of year, and she does an amazing job with it, along with the rest of the team at the high school. And here, of course, Colleen Deven and her staff, it's a small group, nevertheless equally as important to get them all here and tested. So they've worked very hard to do that and do their best. Also wanted to bring to your attention that we're preparing for an advanced ed accreditation visit in April. So right now it's kind of crazy in the curriculum because we're pulling together all of our evidence to show how we align with the standards of quality organizations. We've been having principals and school improvement chairs and data coaches and directors and a lot of BEC people, all the stakeholders getting together and having great discussions on where we think we are and where we think we'll be going in the future. And hopefully we can contribute to the strategic planning that the district is working on as well. And then the last thing to bring to your attention, this Thursday, we are having a district-wide K-12 health curriculum alignment workshop. So we're having representatives from all levels, including physical education, special education will be there, and representatives from those classes, so we can make sure we're aligned with the Michigan model for health. And it's just been a number of years since I've really pulled them together and had these important discussions and getting that realigned. So just letting you know that's coming up this week.
Thank you, Dr. Suri.
Can I ask a question? Just as we go from in the red to in the black, Dr. Suri, and if you pass the Oreo line, so if you had X amount of dollars to put towards curriculum, where would you put that? You know, if there was some money that could be spent on curriculum, what do you think would be the best expenditures towards curriculum for our students?
Well, with anytime there's money to be spent, you think about time, materials, talent, you know, you can spend it different ways. And I think you have to do a clear needs assessment. So if there's a critical need out there, like at one point there was a critical math need, and I think that took precedence for everything. We just said, no, we've got to put it here. If we have all the materials in place that we need to, so the tools are there, the next thing, and almost more important, but just practically speaking, the next important thing for me would be time. Time for teachers to collaborate. So if that's common planning time, if that's time after school, I mean, I don't know, I mean, during the contractual day that is set aside for them and there's some incentive for them to do that, whatever it is, but whenever you have teachers have time to talk about their curriculum, their assessment, their instruction, that's the number one thing that will, and I mean, research will tell us, that's the number one thing that will improve learning in a district. It comes from that level. So that's probably where I want the money from.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Gray, has she ever requested money that she hasn't gotten for curriculum?
Time-wise, I'd say there's probably, she always requests stuff all day long, so, yeah. The big stuff we've been able to do, the math, some of the other pieces that we really needed, I think we've done. So heading into the future, obviously, science will be one that we'll have to address when they actually set the standards, so that's important. In terms of the people, I think, you know, the coaches have been very important, and I would say you're right, you know. She typically goes to mom instead of dad when she asks for these things, and mom says yes, so.
Every time.
Yeah, so I think you're right, Mr. Trombley. I think we've done a good job even while we're in deficit to do that.
I would agree with that.
Dr. Suri, I have one question. You were talking about the ACT prep. When do we transition to SATs? Is that?
Yeah, it's coming up for next year. So this is the last year, supposedly.
Although they're
all
being
talk.
sued right now. ACT is suing the state, so who knows where it'll end up.
So potentially.
Potentially, it should be next year, depending on what happens with the lawsuit.
Okay. Thank you. Finance.
You have in your packet the bills of February 20th through the 27th for your review. And Dr. Chesney has asked me to put together some financial strategies for the board to consider. And so I made a list of them. The first one is the target fund equity minimum, which you just approved this evening. And so in no particular order, there are some other things for the board to consider. I have a goal of having this district having the highest bond rating possible. We're in the top of the B range. We need to get into the A range, and as we stabilize our funds, we should be easily able to make the top rating in the state, so that's a target of mine. We do have some outstanding bus loans. We can strategize the payoff of the timing of those if the board desires. There is an energy bond that is outstanding that we pay out of the general fund about $500,000 every year. That does not become callable until May of 2015, so we couldn't pay it off now if we wanted to. But
could or couldn't?
Could not until May of 2015. And we can also pay it off in chunks. I talked to our financial advisor about this. If we do start calling those bonds, we can do that by issue rather than the whole entire chunk. So we can look at that as well. Are there any questions about that?
I don't know why you do it in chunks, you can pay it.
Well, you pay it in chunks because there's other potential places to spend the money, such as towards curriculum.
Well, and remember too, with, I don't want to say limited resources, but some of these things are vying for our resources. So if we choose one thing, perhaps we can't do something else. So 10% fund equity, that takes the cake for 1560, okay?
Well, and if you think about it, so we've been paying this out of our general fund for approximately 5 years. So we've paid $2.5 million out of our general fund. This was originally set up prior to us. It's a non-voted bond. It was done, I believe, in '06, and it was to get the lights better, the timers, all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't managed, so we didn't save a whole lot of money. It was supposedly going to be paid for out of sinking fund dollars, and then the sinking fund was not renewed the year prior to Dr. Gistinger and I getting here, so that went away, and then the general fund bore the cost of that. That's the history of it.
So a strategy could be then, instead of, or pay from the general fund and take fund equity to replace those dollars.
It's $2.5 million left on that bond.
Year over year, so, you know, you pay your 500,000 out, we could backfill that with money that we have in the fund equity, then you can.
You could.
You know, so basically you're paying it, but then you're bringing that back into and having $500,000 more for curriculum and that.
It'll become more clear when we actually get a budget.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
right now we have the governor's budget. We don't have any other budgets. So as we get closer to May, that's typically when we get our budget. We'll bring all of these decisions in front of you, make our recommendations, and then obviously you get your chance to say yay or nay, and then we adjust. So we'll have those for you here shortly.
A solid financial strategy of a well-run school district is to have a capital equipment replacement plan, whether it be for computers, for school buses, for parking lots, for roofs, things like that. We have foregone replacing our capital project improvements because we did not have the money. So now we've got a plan in place for the purchase of technology that's currently being implemented in the district. We need to think ahead 5 years from now. We have 3 artificial turf fields that in 10 years are going to need some costly maintenance upgrades. So we need to plan for these things for the future, something to keep in mind. We might want to consider creating a capital projects fund for these capital improvements, and we can transfer money into there. There's also the conversation about, do we need a sinking fund since ours has expired? And the last thing on the list is there's talk on a countywide basis of a special ed millage restoration because of the Headley rollback. We're currently not levying the 18 mills that we, well, not 18 because they're an ISD, but the maximum mills that we can for special education because of the Headley rollback. And again, these ideas are not independent of each other. So for instance, if you are successful in passing a sinking fund, we're not going to have to consider whether we open a capital projects fund or not. You have to open a capital projects fund. So these are all just kind of ideas that we wanted to put out there.
And we probably discuss these more during the training meeting on the 28th.
On the 28th, yeah.
Okay.
By the way, on that meeting, is everybody plan on going?
6 yes, 1 no.
Is everybody paying their own way?
That's up to each individual member.
On that meeting, I can't go because I'll be at the Science Olympiad event at Mott College coaching. But on the, it came up, so the 2005 energy bond. The reality is, just so the board members here may or may not know, but when we use sinking fund dollars to pay for the energy bond, it actually took money away from our maintenance programs that it should have been going to.
Yes, I would agree.
And it did. So right now, as we continue to pay for that thing, it's taking dollars away from our students or our maintenance. You know, it doesn't matter what's coming out of the general fund now. My thoughts on the energy bond are, as soon as we can move it down the road without sacrificing any other programs, it's probably the best, because it's been a major, major loser. And you wondered why.
If you don't pay it off, 2020 is when it's done.
Is when it's due. So you pay the $500,000 a year until it's paid, which isn't the end of the world. What's the interest cost from now until then, roughly?
It's about $200,000 a year.
That's quite a bit.
It's $1 million.
That's quite a bit of interest that we could put back into our school. And that's kind of what we're talking about, getting this fund.
We wouldn't get the interest.
Hmm?
We wouldn't get the interest. The taxpayers wouldn't pay the
But that's
interest.
okay, I got it. But
Yeah.
it's saved, technically, it's money that can be used. But the thought process is also, as we go forward on this energy bond and trying to eliminate the cost of it, let's not forget our history. And let's never, ever do it again. And remember, when your track was torn up and we needed a new track and the football field was falling apart, the money that should have been used to fix it was paying for an energy bond that didn't do anything. Okay? Right. It's the facts. And then the district became, oh, these things are in really bad shape. Well, yeah, year after year, if you don't spend the money on them, that's going to happen. And that's what happened here. And we didn't have textbooks. We used the money to pay our energy bond. A couple of years, several years, actually.
5.
5 years. That's right.
Are there any more, Dr. Gistinger?
Thank you. Did you have one more comment?
And just one more thing unrelated to that. At a social function, I ran into a woman by the name of Barb Land. She works for a not-for-profit organization called Square One, and they specialize in automotive-related instruction at the high school level. So she's coming to meet with us on Friday, Dr. Gray, myself, and John Conley in the auto shop. She has resources that are available to curriculum for kids that are interested in some of the things our kids are involved in, such as 3D printers. She has Segways. She works out of her house. She said her garage is stuffed full with 50 car batteries because they're exploring alternate sources of energy for car production. So we're just interested to hear what she has to say. And most of her funding comes from a lot of the automotive suppliers and manufacturers in the area. So we're pretty excited to see what she can bring to our school. A lot of it sounds actually like CAD rather than robotics, but something to think about.
Superintendent, Human Resources.
Yeah, the only, I'm going to skip human resources tonight. I'm going to talk just about the district as a whole. A lot of good things coming up. Ryan, I will not try to steal your thunder. So I'll talk in generalities, but been a pretty prideful winter. Look forward to the musical coming up. It's unbelievable every year. Our band and choir are going out weekly and competing and getting ones, and the tradition of excellence in our fine arts program, and I've been in a lot of districts, is literally second to none. In terms of our winter sports season, and I'm sure John will have everybody here in the next couple of weeks when we round it out, it's been one of our most successful. Watching our wrestling team, win the state championship, and then watching several of our individuals, Nick Brish winning a state championship, Luke Reddy winning a state championship, and the heavyweight or the 215-pound class, we literally almost had 2 Brighton kids wrestle off for first place. Eric Conquest got 4th. Bo Maurer, who's here tonight, got 4th. Jackson Reneker, 5th. And Kyle Bonesack, 8th. It was unbelievable, and I think it just summed up our kids. One, they're just wonderful kids, but Nick Brish was talking today about his individual championship, and he felt that the team championship meant more to him than the individual championship, and that's what we're trying to teach these kids, Bo's one of the toughest 160-pound kids I've ever met, but he's also one of the sweetest kids I've ever met. So we're glad to send kids like that away from Brighton. He'll graduate this year, just like Ryan, and go out and do great things. In the last 5 years, our district's won 6 state championships. There are some districts... There are some districts that have never won one. And if you continue to go back just beyond the 5 or 6 years, there's more and more. It's positive for our school system. It's positive for these kids. And you combine our athletic prowess and our fine arts programming and the academics like John's talking about with robotics and that. And, you know, yeah, there's issues. There's issues in every large organization, but we need to take some of the lead of these kids and follow what they're doing because they're leading this district very, very well.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Student representative.
Sorry, Ryan.
You're fine, Dr. Gray. So at the last meeting, I volunteered to talk to some various high school students about their opinion on the best way to implement the Pledge of Allegiance at the high school. So after talking with the leadership class at the high school and student council, the message that I received was that what we're currently doing at the high school is fine. Every morning, students are given the opportunity to say the pledge, and the rest is left up to their own personal beliefs. One suggestion was made to possibly find a solution to help students who feel uncomfortable standing because no one else in the class is. Personally, I don't know if there is a proper solution to this since the school cannot force anyone to stand up if they do not want to. And then on that topic, one final recap. This is, again, my own personal opinion. I think that opinions about whether or not students should stand up are beside the point. The law states that every student needs to be given the opportunity, and that's what Brighton High School is doing. So then just to touch on athletics and a couple of miscellaneous things, I know Dr. Gray and Mr. Birchfield already commented on a couple things, but the Brighton wrestling team took a state title. Wrestlers Nick Brish and Luke Reddy also got individual championships. This past Saturday, the girls' varsity gymnastics team qualified for states, and Brighton's varsity ski team recently competed at states as well, and they placed 7th. Then next week, Tuesday, March the 17th, there will be BHS's second Red Cross blood drive of the year. And coming up soon, per what was announced at the last school board meeting, Brighton High School's musical Nice Work If You Can Get It will be shown the weekends of March 20th and March 27th. That's all.
All right, thank you.
The Heartland policy that they did regarding students and how they handled it, it said, it talks about if a student or teacher is in the hall or office during the Pledge of Allegiance, he or she must stand and remain silent. That's what they did in respect to the flag. It talks about anybody who has an issue against the pledge or salute or are representatives of foreign government, blah, blah, blah. It talks about that. Will be excused from, obviously, any of that. But that's what Heartland was looking at, some kind of a policy. How do we handle it? And I think that that's is a reasonable thing. And I will suggest that last year in the first semester of this year, I don't know that it was announced on the announcements that it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't believe it was. And so currently, though, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and I think our principal is actually reciting the pledge, correct? Yes, Mr. Vecchiano was reciting the pledge, which I think is a great thing, and a step in the direction. I appreciate, again, you working with the students. Again, as we look at our patriotic / constitutional obligation to uphold that one on the walls.
John, I was actually in the leadership class the day that they talked about it, and it was a rich discussion.
I think it's great.
The kids were great about it. I think they had a lot of great points. I don't know, Ryan, you can probably comment on more, but I just think the level of maturity and respect in terms of that conversation was great. And
I think it's good, but I also think that the direction, it's good to hear from the students.
Oh, sure.
The final direction comes from the board, so the next student group that comes in, you lead, and it has a boilerplate to start. So in between everybody's concerns, and we certainly listen to it, and I'd love to hear any, like I said at the beginning of it right now, but as the board decides, like I said, I just am going to look at what each school does, just as a FYI kind of things, and then our board has to do what it thinks is best for our district. So
I think Pinckney goes even further than that.
What's that?
Pinckney goes even further than that.
They do a little bit.
Correct.
And, but again, this is where I get more information, so it's
Sure.
being fair. But thank you.
Thanks, Ryan, for taking charge of that. I really appreciate that as a board. All right, now it's time for our second call to the public. If you'd like to address the Board of Education, please step to the podium. The same rules apply. You get 3 minutes. State your name and where you're from. Mr. Chesley will give you a 30-second warning with a yellow card. Please try to respect our time at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeremiah Johnson. I live in 10370 Marshall Road. I'm in South Lyon technically, but I go to Brighton School because I'm like right in the border. And I want to address the Pledge of Allegiance thing, like from a student's perspective. And I come to like a lot of these meetings, and at this point, it kind of seems like being a dead horse almost. They do the Pledge of Allegiance at our school, like they give the students the opportunity to. Ms. Vecchione says it, and the people that want to do it, they stand up, and the people that don't, they don't. And it's like, most of the time, honestly, the students that do stand up, they don't take it seriously, and it's almost like it doesn't have a place in the classroom anymore. But they get the opportunity, the students, they all get the opportunity. And I don't know, the talk is getting old, it sounds like. Like, we're not Heartland, we're not Howell. Brighton students are different from Heartland and Howell students. The idea that saying the Pledge of Allegiance makes you a patriot is just untrue, and that's not what patriotism is. Patriotism is being here, now, caring about your community, doing your part. It isn't ritual, it isn't pledges and testaments, it's being here. So please, can we move on? Like, there are real problems at our school. Like bullying, the problem with having a set number of credits, like so students can, I don't know, do what they're passionate about. Students suffering from depression and anxiety aren't provided with the opportunity to slow down and learn at their own pace. And most importantly, the student body as a whole isn't really being prepared for life, but for college, solely for that. And I don't know how to do taxes, and I'm 18, and I'm graduating. And that doesn't make me a stupid person. It's just that people indirectly in charge of my education are spending a lot of time on things like the Pledge of Allegiance. And I don't know, there are other problems. That's all I have to say.
Do I have to give my address again, or? No, okay. So I'm hoping that the board will consider class size. One of the things that the discussions that have been generated on social media and across a couple of different news sites have brought to my attention is that we do a tremendous job maintaining our student body once we get to the multi-level, but that when we're in the lower grades, there's a great concern over class size. And I just want to remind you that with all this talk about incentivizing shared service work and setting aside of equity percentages and so forth, that the fundamental tool to implementing a good curriculum is a manageable class size. And I also wanted to say, I think that it's the responsibility of the people on the board to maybe not pledge their allegiance, but show their allegiance to Brighton area schools, not to gotcha moments, not to try and set people up to look bad or look like they put a check somewhere where it wasn't supposed to be and make it look like a scandal that it isn't. And certainly not to spend their own personal time putting out signs and fighting against raising the money for our schools that have made Brighton area schools come back and be the force that it is today. I'm tired of fighting against my own board. It's exhausting. There are individuals on this board who stood to save tens of thousands of dollars in property taxes by defeating that bond. I took the high road. I didn't say that during meetings. I shared it with friends, put it down on a couple social media sites. It's on public record. Everybody can look it up, right down to the dollar. It's conflict of interest.
Thank you, Ben.
I, too, am tired of being an attack dog or perceived as one. Every board member here does good things. But when they do things that are not good for the schools, they need to be held accountable. I find it really interesting that the Open Meetings Act materials came out right after I was ejected from a meeting down the road. Somehow this is another gotcha. And I'm going to tell you, I never ever feared, no matter how passionate I was at these meetings, and no matter with whom I disagreed, that I would be taken out in handcuffs. I was free to express my opinions. And the insinuation that somehow this board, in some nefarious way, has violated the Open Meetings Act is an insult to you. You're doing your best. You're transparent. And the people who are playing gotcha and dragging the rest of us into a political battle, which they started, they threw down the gauntlet. Their curriculum and their manifestos explicitly state that they are interested in defeating the public schools as they are currently formed. It's on the record. I didn't want to keep this up. I didn't want to bring this back here. But there are members of this board who keep bringing it back here, and they need to be held accountable. Zero tolerance for bullying. Thank you.
Hi, Kara Totero, 4095 Dominion Boulevard in Brighton. And I wasn't sure exactly what Sue Ellen said about class size, but just so you know, there are some of us above the elementary level that would love to see the class size go down. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board this evening? Last call, I see none. Next agenda item is a closed session, and we don't plan on attacking any other things after that closed session. So, do you have a motion to go into closed session?
I have a motion to go into...
Yeah. No, you just have 5 minutes between. Go ahead.
Okay. Motion to go into closed session to approve the February 23rd closed minutes and for the purpose of discussing negotiation strategies with BASAA, BEA, and BESPA bargaining units, inasmuch as the administration has requested a closed session.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Conley. Mr. Rouse.
Yes.
Mr. Shields. Yes. Mrs. Minor. Yes. Mr. Trombley. Yes. Mr. Stahl. Yes. Dr. Chesky.
Yes. We're going to take a 5-minute recess.